Hey, welcome to Designing Adobe XD. I am Talon Wadsworth. I am your host. I'm also the lead designer for Adobe XD here, bringing you. I don't know about you guys, but that intro always gets me so hyped. But I'm always excited for Fridays, and here we are with our regular show. Welcome everyone. It's so exciting. I was just so excited all morning to come in and see some of those usual faces, meet some new people here in the chat. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Friday. Welcome to another session with me here. We're gonna be designing some stuff in XD today. We're gonna be taking your questions. You guys have questions about XD, anything at all, let me know. But let's say hi to everybody. What's going on? Matthias, always great to see you. Of course, Paco here, as always, keeping things running smoothly. Anel, how are you? Masab, Claire Lou, Cindy, Osama, everybody, thanks for joining us. What's going on today? You guys having a good day? You guys designing some cool stuff? You working on something really exciting? You're working something kind of boring? I don't know. Sometimes it goes either way. They're not always the most exciting tasks, but it's all part of it. It's all part of the process. Alberto, Powell, thanks for joining us here today. How are you guys doing? You guys working in XD? You guys trying anything new? You guys have any questions for me? Let me know. Again, I'm just excited to be here. And today we're trying something new. Again, like I've mentioned here a few times as we've kind of kicked off the new year, we're trying some new stuff. We're trying some new formats. And at least one Friday out of a month, I thought it'd be really cool if we just talked about process. If we got just really deep into one part of the UX design process, of just design process overall, the creative process, and share some learnings and some tips from my own process. Again, because I was thinking about this today as I was, this week as I was coming up with a topic for what we were going to cover. Anytime you sit down and you have to start work, it feels like it never gets any easier. Hey Torkel, how's it going? How about, do you find it like anytime you sit down to start a new project or start a new file, does it feel like it gets easier? Because I've been faced lately with a couple projects, things that maybe I haven't maybe done in a while, or something that might be kind of intimidating, and man, I just had a hard time getting going, just finding that rhythm, just getting myself back into the creative, kind of creative flow. So today we're gonna be talking about that. What do you guys do to kind of get yourself going when you're starting a brand new project from scratch? Share them with us. Let's talk about it. Like I said, I don't have all the answers. I have things that work for me, and we're gonna share some of those, and we're gonna look at some of those and design in XD a little, just kind of get our feet wet. But I really want to learn from all of you out there. How do you guys get going on a new project? Any tips, any tricks, any habits that you formed? I have a feeling habits play a huge part of this. So let me know. So Matthias is talking about how, that's right, Matthias got a new gig, everybody. He and I, we keep up. And he's been doing some work in XD to kind of help his team figure out some workflows with AEM and everything with Adobe sort of digital asset management. So he's got some interesting sort of learning, so you guys should check it out. Khaled, welcome. How are you doing? Welcome from Chile, down there in the southern hemisphere. Is it probably about the same time in Chile, isn't it? Same time of day? Yeah, the same hemisphere, So, Matthias, steal all your ideas from Behance. Well, there's that book, right? All great artists steal. Of course, I got a lot of opinions about that, but always happy to talk about that. But it is a good place to start, and actually is something that I was going to talk about today. So, usually, what happens, when I'm sort of faced with kind of a new project, again, I'm sort of just starting from scratch. I may have a brief from a client. I may have a bunch of ideas sort of swirling around. Maybe I've sketched out a few things, here in my sketchbook. But when I get down to really starting to execute, again, the paper and pencil, there's just no distance, right? It's just so easy to just sort of sketch out those ideas. But now I want to start translating them into something tangible, something I can share and start to get feedback on. And again, maybe like every time it doesn't feel like it gets easier. When you go into XD, as I do, of course, every day to design my work, you're faced with some choices, right? And I actually love making choices. I think that's one of the first things about getting started to kind of help you kind of over that hump is making choices. So when you go into the you sort of launch XD or you launch any of the programs you're going to start using, like Keynote, again, like one of the things that like an app that I used to use a lot, Fireworks used to do, is you would launch a new document and it would just be blank, just completely blank, just like completely wide open, no thought of where it ends or begins, and the possibility is endless, right? Like that blank, there's actually nothing more though intimidating than this blank canvas. Like when there's nothing to sort of start anchoring your ideas to, and you're left kind of unmoored, this can actually stop you from working. And so this is like my most hated enemy, this sort of blank page. And so, again, even like, I like to share a lot of like thoughts and ideas about what went into making XD, but that's actually why there's this row of icons up here. You have these starting points. What are you designing? Well, maybe am I designing an iPhone app, right? Am I designing for an iPad? I'm designing for the web, or do I have something else sort of in mind? I always feel like as a designer, like making decisions like helps kind of move the process forward, right? If I say I'm designing for the web, here I am, and now I've made some decisions. This might not be where I end up in the long run, but like this is like a standard web size. This is a great starting point for me. And so this is kind of the place now, and I always like to start with and really use XD almost as like this like the idea collector. I think it's one of my favorite things to do. Is to sort of start just collecting ideas. And Matthias mentioned Behance. Do you guys use Behance? You guys go check those out. Yeah, so John, I mean, again, like the reason like we went about making XD is to really help sort of get your ideas jump started and kind of getting them, from design to prototype to sharing very seamlessly. So again, like a lot of these ideas that I have, a lot of things that I struggle with every time I sit down to do something, I wanted to make XD that tool that really like help me get over that hump, right? Like, because again, like, all right, now where do I go from here? So, so if you guys have any other personal, tips and tricks to share, share them in the chat. Let's hear about it. So BC, actually, this kind of caught my eye. He's working on a personal project, Art and Autism, an online platform inspired by art and autism using XD. That sounds really intriguing, BC. You definitely share some links on Twitter with me. I'd love to see that as it's coming along. So again, like personally, again, I always have to remind myself though, I always like to go back and really start with, again, some kind of collecting, right? This is that early phase. I have a brief, I have a project I have the job, but this is the phase where I really start just to really start collecting sort of whether it's inspiration or previous work, anything that you can do to help trigger the next step. Any decision you can make is going to help you go further. So here on my desktop, and some people have asked me about this, and I'm gonna start here because this is kind of a little quirky thing I learned from one of my instructors. I have this folder called the morgue. And this comes from an old instructor of mine, one of my mentors, and she of course came from an era where everything was print. And she worked for a press shop. And they would keep a sample of previous jobs in this giant drawer. And someone at the company labeled it the morgue. Like this was like the resting place of like all these like sort of random ideas. And what I love about that idea is that over time you sort of just have all these things in there, and they might have started very unrelated, but once they're in there and sort of all mixed together, one of the things I love to do as a designer is make connections. And so this is my sort of morgue folder. And this is something that, this has stuff that I've collected over very long periods of time. Just just inspiration and sort of different sort of pieces of work or screenshots I grabbed, or visual sort of inspiration, and that I'm always sort of collecting again, because right, as designers, as creatives, that process never really stops. You're constantly sort of looking and seeing and evaluating the world and being curious, and sort of collecting an idea or writing down a little something, jotting it down, sketching it out. It might not be important now, but it might come in handy later. And what I love about this morgue folder is just sort of flipping through here and seeing all the disparate ideas, and my brain immediately starts to sort of make connections. And so, I start seeing things, and in particular, I like to look for inspiration from things that sort of outside of maybe the medium or the sort of trends of the sort of space that I'm going to be working in. So when a lot of times when I'm doing, mobile design or I'm doing web design, I'm looking for inspiration kind of outside of those topics. I usually don't start with Dribble. I usually start with something a little outside of that. So what I do is I really just start sort of dragging these in. I take some things that sort of catch my eye, and I start pulling them outside of that sort of more random context. And by having them here on my canvas, I can start sort of seeing them together. I start sort of seeing kind of these things out here, and so different styles. And as I bring them in, these are just things that I had been collecting kind of online, and things that I really like. Right? I'm really starting to draw some connections. I'm starting to sort of see some things that I like. I'm not gonna steal or really copy any of these. I'm looking for that first step, like what's gonna generate the next idea, right? So again, one of those places that you guys might go to, a huge thing to do is you go out to Behance. And this is kind of a great place to look as well. I also, we go to Adobe Stock, maybe we're looking for something a little more specific, but if I'm looking for something more general, one of my go-tos is also Pinterest. I have a lot of boards here where I'm sort of collecting ideas, and I'm sort of labeling them, again, kind of filing them away for later use, right? And so I really love sort of going in here and sort of finding some of them, going to more random things. Again, looking at art, I do a lot of that, looking at art, looking at print, kind of from the past, looking at architecture. I also have a whole sort of section here on color, which has been really cool, because it sort of starts to, I'm sort of setting up that kind of like next phase as well, because again, this is sort of my early sort of collection sort of period of work. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go and now start building some of those pieces. And I kind of touched on this a little bit last time. One of the things that I'm in my mind, I'm already kind of optimizing around is I'm optimizing around consistency and sort of building up a sort of system or a language for my project. See you, Nell. Great to see you. Thanks for always dropping in. Keep at it. Keep doing it. Keep sharing your work. Keep hustling, and good things will come. So, yeah, Matthias, I don't think they maybe owes you hours of your life back. Again, like if you're a creative, you're a designer, like it's valuable time. I don't know if it's billable time, but I think it's valuable. So again, the sort of next thing I'm doing as I'm setting up and sort of thinking about inspiration, again, it's not just sort of gathering on its own. I'm always thinking about the next step. And the next step for me is to start to put into place kind of the more kind of like global elements of my design. Again, I know I'm going to be working on either a web page or a mobile app design, which means that I want to have a consistent theme. And that theme starts with color and character style, and then extends to things like imagery and layout. But again, I know that those things will be reused across my design, and my design will be stronger if I start to think about that earlier. Yeah, Brad, I mean, that's really interesting. I have dabbled with clients doing Pinterest boards as well, but this is usually a phase I actually don't like to show to clients. Back in the day when I was doing more client-facing work. this morgue that I have, this sort of collection of inspiration that I have, or again, I'm pulling out small elements, like I'm looking at a typeface or I'm looking at a color theme. Like this is like the raw DNA of what's going to make up my project for a client. And anytime I've shared that with a client, it's gone really badly, really poorly. What usually happens is they get a little overly influenced by someone else's work. And of course, I don't want them to do that. I actually don't want them to know, again, like where those points came from. I think it's helpful to build up a language that sort of, when they say, I want something like this, that can help me sort of form a direction. Again, anything that's going to help me, put those first pixels down or put those first elements down on the canvas is going to be helpful. So information from them, but I don't want them to get too tied to something, because I want the sort of freedom to be able to sort of follow kind of where my decisions take me, which is a really important part of being a designer, right? So here I've sort of started to gather a few things, and of course one of the other, again, I'm sort of now kind of starting to optimize towards that system, building up a language from some of this inspiration, or pulling from different elements, and again, always combining them together. And I never want to completely copy work, but what I'm looking to do is start to pull different elements and draw connections. Again, I think in a lot of ways, art and culture is a conversation that we're having with one another, where we're constantly sort of being inspired by and riffing on and making new connections as we do as people, as designers, right? That's what makes us creatives. I actually really love kind of this color palette. I'm actually gonna grab this here. So again, I'm thinking about kind of best practices now for things like color and things like typography and web design and UX design more broadly. What are the best practices? What are the ways in which I can create a really solid system, right, that I can then apply and that can help accelerate my work, right? Because I mean, if you guys have tuned in before, I talk a lot about speed. I talk a lot about, the speed of me making decisions and working can really allow me to try new ideas in real time and try more ideas so that I can get to that kind of one solid solution. So yeah, as I said, we're getting here. We're gonna start kind of building up that system. So Boris had some feedback that I love, Boris. So if you guys have feedback for me, I love seeing it. Matthias, of course, is doing a great job sort of posting up the user voice. I hear you, Boris. Hover is coming. It's being worked on right now. I can tell you the team is actively working on that. So hopefully not that much longer to wait. So, but I always love hearing that feedback. So, yeah, Boris, your vote there does matter. It definitely does put that up into everybody's kind of the top of our priority list. And I think it's really just a matter of time. So there's only so many of us, and we can only work on so many features at once. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start sort of, again, using some of my knowledge of systems to start laying in the foundation of my work here for this website. So one of the things I'm going to do, of course, I know, and this is where I'm able to make decisions quickly because I have some knowledge of those spaces, is I'm going to start laying in some of my sort of foundational pieces of the system here. So, normally, best practices on things like when you're designing for the web is to have a sort of consistent sort of hierarchy for your type system. And that usually starts with having a headline type and maybe possibly a sort of secondary headline type that's a little smaller, right? And these don't have to be precise, and I'm going to change these over time, but this is really just placeholder. Again, I'm starting to at least put something down on canvas, right? Anytime you can just start going forward, start making decisions, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to help you get to that next phase, right? Everything's going to be to keep sort of optimizing towards that. So again, one of the biggest things that helps me is to just start designing. Even if I know this is not how it's going to be in the end, this is going to help me just start designing. And once you start, again, it's just like getting that engine going, right? Just kind of turning it over, just starting to get those gears moving. And again, as you design, one thing will lead to the next, and hopefully in the end, we come out with something really beautiful. So we're gonna have that, and then I'm gonna do some body copy here. All right, so we don't want to make it too small for the web. So we'll do that. And then I'm going to convert it to a text box. And are you guys using plugins? I'm going to use a plugin here. Again, anything to help me kind of get going faster. There's this amazing plugin in XD now called, it's a lorem ipsum generator. And I found this, it was just like right there, like waiting for me. It was amazing. So I'm going to start to sort of fill that with some placeholder text. All right. Insert the text. All right, now I've got some text to play around with, and look how much time that saved me, and it just keeps again moving me forward. All right, so, all right. So there's some of my pieces. Now I'm actually gonna start even like laying in some color here as well. And one of my favorite things to do that I have been a huge fan of for a very long time is the Adobe Color website. I don't know if you guys ever use this. This is one of my favorite features going way back. And my favorite thing to do is actually generate a color palette from an image. And I'm going to grab this image and I'm going to let Adobe Color magically generate a color palette. Oh man, and our color palette doesn't look as good here as it does on my screen, but we're gonna roll with it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a quick sort of screenshot. There are other ways I could do this, but a lot of the times, again, I'm just really focused on just getting stuff up and going. I'm just gonna take a screenshot and actually copy it directly into XD. And this is gonna be my little placeholder here for my design system that I'm building, or my sort of style system, I'll call it. And we gotta be careful. Design systems mean something a little different to different people, so. All right, so there we go. Now I've got some color. I'm going to extract these using some squares here, grabbing these color swatches. Actually, first, let me actually work smart, not hard. I'm actually going to just do a little repeat grid. I'm going to undo that. And now I'm going to sample each of these colors for my color palette. Because what I'm going to do next is my favorite part. So now that I have those sort of down, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the assets panel here, and I'm going to now start to add all these global elements to my assets panel, which means when I start to use them kind of throughout my design, I can always go back to the assets panel, and if I decide to maybe try something different or change something, now if I just have to do it in one place in the asset panel, and it will just go out and update everywhere in my design. So again, I'm really thinking ahead, and this is only again, one of those things like through experience that you learn, is you start to learn to sort of optimize around certain ways of working, certain patterns, and this is super helpful. Again, and one of the key things about gaining that really valuable experience that'll make you better in the long run is sort of starting to sort of think ahead and anticipate some of the things that you're going to be doing, and that will really accelerate your work and just help you going or get going. Again, like this is one of the things I do when I start every project. I collect some inspiration, some things that I'm going to start kind of using to sort of take some sort of stylistic cues from, maybe start connecting the dots, trying and recombining some different ideas, and I'm always starting with these elements right here, and it really is always this. It's 5 color swatches to sort of fit very nicely in a kind of theme. It's the standard sort of like type style system. And that's sort of where I always start with almost every gig that I've ever had. So here I'm gonna add those colors to my asset panel here by selecting them and hitting plus. And I'm going to add these character styles here. And I'm not too worried. I started with the default, started with Helvetica. But now I'm gonna go back and I'm actually gonna start maybe changing some of these. So here, there's this mono-spaced one that I really love. And did you guys know on Adobe Type, you can now sync any of these typefaces down to your local machine and use them inside of any Adobe application? It's pretty amazing, I gotta say. All right, I'm gonna go check out what fonts I'm using because I don't remember the name of this one that I really loved. I think it was this one. This is a tongue. All right. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna update all of these to say tongue. Ah, that's the spirit. That's what I want. And I'm actually gonna apply my global color. Now I'm gonna re-add those, and I'm just going to delete these other ones real quick. All right, that's what I want. That's what I like. All right. So now here again, I've started sort of having some of these base elements. And again, this is gonna help me sort of start to think about style. And then the next phase I usually like to do is start to now, of course, if we're gonna be doing some UI stuff, is I like to start sort of grabbing some pieces here, start designing some of those UI elements I know I'm gonna need. Oh, BC, the Adobe Color app on the phone, also amazing, super handy, using libraries, love all of that. I'm a big fan of that. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go grab a UI kit. I don't know if you guys are utilizing any of these UI kits through XD. So you can go and access them through the file menu here, or you can just launch the sort of home screen here, and you can go into add-ons, and you can get a little preview and actually, again, open up and access some of these resources like UI kits. I'm gonna grab this wireframe one because I'm with web, and I'm gonna be I'm doing my web project, and this has hopefully some elements that I'm going to want to start designing my website. So look, I have all these great sort of resources to start with. And anything that can help me sort of start to get my idea up and off the ground. Again, I think, like designers should always be thinking about presentation, should always be thinking about style. And it's such a great place for me personally to start from that I really, again, just like this helps me get those ideas going, and it's always valuable. And I always feel like I never waste time when I'm doing this kind of work. Hey Zaryeb, how are you doing? How's it going? Thanks for joining us. So here I am, I'm gonna grab some of these elements, and I might just grab this whole sheet right here, this UI, this seems like a very handy sheet. All these sort of UI elements, these buttons. I'm just gonna copy that over into my document, right? Now, this is where things get, I think, really fun. Is now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these, I'm gonna select them all, and I'm going to add those colors to the global assets panel here. And then what I can do is I can go in and actually kind of re-theme all these components just using the assets panel. So I'm going to take and replace some of these colors here. And as you can see, as I'm doing that, it starts to actually update those components as they're in use here inside of XD. Let's see, there we go. I guess actually this ones are using some different blues. What happened there? Oh, they're linked, that's why. I forgot, never mind. What I first have to do is I have to make these all local symbols. So I don't know if you guys, it's so funny, it happens so seamlessly, I completely forgot. So when you copy and paste symbols out of one document into another one, they actually stay linked to that document. And really handy if I'm working with some other people. But here I want to make a break, so I'm actually going to just sort of ungroup all these and make them local symbols. So let's see. Let's multi-select all these and make local symbols. Okay, now if we kind of walk that back a little bit there, I'm gonna make all these local symbols. All right, now when I go and I add them all here, now when I go to update this color, there we go. That's what we wanted. We want to see all of those components start to update. Nice. So yeah, so what that's going to help me do now that I have both sort of my basic kit, and now I'm starting to sort of pull in some of these elements Now when I start to sort of work my way into sort of defining kind of the UX flow like of my experience, I've got all these things sort of already in place. I know my app's going to be consistent kind of across the board. And I've just started working. And I think that's the real kind of secret here to sort of kind of end on, is that, you know, when you're faced with a blank screen, you're faced with a brand new project, the best thing to do is just start designing, right? Find and sort of develop those habits that'll help you whenever you're faced with a new project. As long as you sort of like start the way you always start, the next decision will always come, and the next one after that. And by the time you know it, you're done. You're ready, you're handing something off to a client. And it's really only through developing those habits and developing those ways of working. And again, I've shared a few of my tips today. I'd love to hear more of kind of how you guys, some of those habits that help you get going every time you're faced with a creative project. If you want to tweet at me at Mr. Talon. Yeah, so this is just sort of a trial run and some new stuff we're trying. So if you guys like this kind of content, let me know. Again, like this is just sort of one element of the overall design process, and I hope to share more of my own process with you in the future as well. So thank you guys all for joining me, and we'll be back. Actually, I won't be back next week. We're gonna have a special guest on. I'm gonna be in Tokyo, but I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Next week, tune in. Ainsley Wagner, one of our amazing designers, is gonna be on, and she's gonna be doing some really cool stuff. So tune in next week, and always hit me up on Twitter. I'm always around. All right, thanks guys. See ya.